Shabbat Shalom, Chag Urim Sameach. So much of Judaism is about remembering. Remembering to keep Shabbat holy, remembering that we were taken out of Egypt by God, remembering what Amalek did to us. And this year, this idea of remembering, it's not just so we can recall exactly what has happened to us in the past, but remembering, at least in Judaism, is meant to shape how we act in the future. These things we need to remember as part of our Judaism are so emphasized. They're so emphasized that they almost alter our memory. And in our Parashat Miketz, we learn about Joseph's memory, what he prefers to remember and what he prefers to forget. In this week's Parashat, Joseph comes face to face with his past. He encounters his brothers and is faced with a dilemma of how to act towards them. And as we know, Joseph treats his brothers harshly. He enacts a sort of twisted revenge upon them. And between last Parsha and now, Joseph has transformed from being a prisoner to being Pharaoh's viceroy and dream interpreter. And Joseph interprets from Pharaoh's dreams that in Egypt there will be 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of famine. And it's right before the years of famine where Joseph has and names his sons, Menashe and Ephraim. Names whose meaning gives us a profound insight into Joseph's psyche. The Torah gives us the explanation for Menashe, that it means God has made me forget completely my hardship and my parental home. Ki nashani Elohim et kol amali ve'et kol beit avi. There's irony in the fact that he names his son for something that he wants to forget, as names traditionally serve as reminders. Nevertheless, there's a sentiment of the name. The sentiment of the name of Menashe is heartbreaking. As Joseph raises a new generation and reinvents a new version of himself, he prefers to forget everything that has come before. But what parts of Joseph's past is he really trying to forget? The most intuitive answer would be Joseph's painful past with his brothers. We all know the harsh treatment his brothers put him through. They threw him in a pit and they sold him to slavery. Of course, Joseph would want to forget this. And our commentators, they offer some other explanations. Al-Sheikh, a 16th century commentator, writes that Joseph was actually trying to forget his father. Joseph is faced with the dilemma of whether or not he should tell his father Jacob that he was alive while he was in Egypt. And he chose not to tell Jacob because Jacob would have asked for him to come home. And this would have gotten in the way of God's will of fulfilling the dreams that Joseph had and of fulfilling God's will of the grand reunion between Joseph and his father. And what strikes me most about Al-Sheikh's commentary is that Joseph wants to forget the sweet parts of his past rather than the ugly ones. Perhaps it was too painful to think of what he had lost, the father who treated him so well, who bestowed so much love into him, and who he did not want to picture wailing in grief to his favorite child. Perhaps these pleasant memories of him feeling accepted as part of his family are the hardest to live with because he is completely severed from that life. Rabbi Aviva Zornberg comments, "The dangers of obsession with the past are very real for Joseph. They have the power to cripple him in the essential task he has undertaken. Not only the evils of the past, but its loves, its beauty, and its sweetness. All have become perilous to one whose business is sheer survival. Nostalgia, yearning, and the sweetness of light of his own culture might hamper him in his single-minded role as life sustainer for many nations. In Likutei Maharan, a Hasidic commentary written by Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, we're offered another possibility of what Joseph is really trying to forget. Rabbi Nachman writes that who Joseph is actually trying to forget is God. He says that there are some who were once close to God but have since grown distant. And while we have seen that in our text, God has been with Joseph throughout his hardships, perhaps it is during this time of Joseph's success where God does not dwell as closely. Forgetting one's past, one's childhood's home, one's loves, one's traumas, perhaps is losing a piece of God. Rabbi Nachman also comments that people are able to repair this distant relationship with God. Perhaps this is a piece of the story where, despite Joseph's successes, he is the farthest away from God, and it is not until he reveals himself to his brothers and comes to accept and move on from his past that God returns closer to him. So while Menashe's name is forgetting, Ephraim's name is almost the opposite. The Torah describes Ephraim as meaning, God has made me fertile in the land of my affliction. The name Ephraim plays into the irony of Joseph's hoping to forget his past. According to Malbim, a 19th century scholar, Ephraim serves as a reminder to Joseph's affliction that will keep him grateful for his present and future. Remembering his past will allow him to live with humility and that he will not take his success for granted. The name Ephraim also contradicts Menashe in that commentators see it as much more positive. It is written in Kedushat Levi that when naming his second son, Joseph speaks only about the manifestly positive experiences that have followed his painful experiences. He alludes to a story that where Jacob switches the order of how he blesses his grandchildren, saying that the reason Jacob blessed Ephraim, the youngest child, first, is that God sends the cure before he inflicts the disease being the name of Menashe. But I don't necessarily see Menashe's name as negative and Ephraim's name as positive, as only positive. Ephraim's name is to recall and dwell on the affliction, hoping it creates blessing. It is about completely relying on the past in order to inform one's perception of the present. And by doing this, one could be negating other realities. It is almost like a trauma-informed way of living. It seems that the names Joseph picks for his sons reflect how Joseph is living in this black and white world, one that shifts abruptly from the deepest suffering to the highest highs. It also reflects the reality he lives in throughout the Parashat, a time of extreme bounty followed by a time of extreme famine. These dramatic back and forths that have happened so far in his story are like whiplash and will continue on even throughout the story in the context of his emotions. To me, what Joseph decides to name his children can be interpreted in two ways. On one hand, it shows Joseph's desire to move on. Joseph wants to reinvent himself, to pick himself back up by his bootstraps and live a life he never had. And on the flip side, the naming of his boys reflect the struggle and confusion of what to do about his past. Should he forget it or use it to inform the future? Joseph does not know how to deal with his past, so he names his sons in hope that they will be the blessing that allows him to forget everything that was done to him and be able to grow from that dark place. Did Joseph end up forgetting his past like Menashe's name suggests, or remember his past, as it is a reminder of how to act in the future, like Ephraim's name? And as we quickly learn from this story of Joseph coming face to face with his brothers, Joseph has not forgotten his past at all. As soon as Joseph meets his brothers, we see in the text that he is faced with flashbacks. As soon as he recognizes his brothers, the text says, Vayizkor Yosef et hachalomot, remembering the dreams that he had dreamed about them. Joseph then said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the land in its nakedness." This recollection that Joseph had about his dream was the impetus of this abuse of power and the revenge he casts on his brothers. It was immediate, almost as if the memory itself caused Joseph's next thought to accuse them of being spies. Unlike what Menashe's name suggests, Joseph did not successfully forget his past. His haste actions of dealing harshly with his brothers is preceded by Joseph's recall of memories. But as Ephraim's name tells us, Joseph's recollection of his past affliction does not make him fruitful, or in this case, merciful. Just like Rabbi Aviva Zornberg said, it is his memories that will cripple him. The contrast between Menashe and Ephraim reveals a tension. Neither forgetting nor remembering brings Joseph peace. Forgetting doesn't erase pain, and remembering doesn't guarantee growth. Instead, his unprocessed trauma fuels mistrust and anger, preventing true healing. So what can we learn from this? What was Joseph supposed to do if both remembering and suppressing his past has caused him pain? The fact is, we cannot prevent pain, but we can prevent the amount of suffering. Suppressing our past doesn't ease the burden, and fixating on it can paralyze us. Instead, we must integrate our memories, both sweet and bitter, into a narrative that guides us forward. The Sivat Emet leaves us with a connection between the two names and Chanukah. He quotes his grandfather, who reflects on two famous approaches of lighting the Chanukah candles you might be familiar with. The one of Beit Hillel, that increases the amount of candles that we light per night, and the one of Beit Shammai, where the candles gradually decrease. He reflects that Beit Hillel's idea is about increasing positivity, while Beit Shammai's idea is about decreasing negativity. And he compares to the names of Ephraim and Menashe. Based on Joseph's psyche, while naming his children, he probably saw Menashe as diminishing all of his darkness all at once. And while Ephraim can be seen as increasing the light all at once. He wanted both of these. But the Sifat Emet suggests that it's gradual, that perhaps the names of Joseph's sons did not reflect Joseph's state of volatility, but perhaps his sons' names were blessings for him to experience a gradual diminishing of the hurt that he experienced and a gradual increase of the positive fruitfulness of his future. So as we're coming to the end of this calendar year, a day where we will also be lighting Chanukah candles, it will still be Chanukah, let us take this time to reflect on the year we've had and what memories we want to hold on to. Memory is not a perfect record. It's something that we shape and that we tailor. And like Joseph, we often manipulate our memories. But let us avoid extremes, where we block out key parts and overemphasize others. And as we reflect, let us thoughtfully choose what memories we do want to bring forward and which ones we just want to settle in the background. How we frame our experiences of 2024 will profoundly shape the way we step into 2025. May our reflection of memories, good and bad, propel us into a more meaningful and fruitful year ahead. Shabbat Shalom, Chag Urim Sameach.